What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Malika. Thank you so much for stopping by. If it's your first time here, I'm an American expat and I have lived in 3 different countries, and I love sharing my experiences with you guys and helping you move abroad if that's something that you want to do. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and check me out on Instagram and TikTok, especially my move abroad tips and my expat life playlists. But today I'm going to be diving into my experience living in Europe and living in Asia as a Black woman and what that was like, and some info you might need if you're on the fence about where you want to move to, geographical differences, cultural differences, cost of living differences, and other things you need to know. So let's get right into Europe versus Asia for Black women who want to live abroad. So let's start with the culture. And for one, just for context, I lived in Italy. I moved alone in my 20s, went to grad school, ended up working in fashion for a couple of years and stayed there for a while before coming back home. Now I live in Hong Kong with my husband, so very different circumstances, but I will give you the best of my experience in this video. And so I think that for Black women in Europe, especially when I was living in Italy, the experience with race can be very nuanced. Overt racism does exist, obviously, like it very much is a thing, but a lot of times it is also very subtle and very much tied to class. So I was an American, so that kind of made me a little bit more palatable and accepted than maybe someone from a different country. Like there was a lot more shade thrown and mistreatment of Africans than there were of Americans, simply because we are just perceived differently. And at the time, I also, I was working in fashion. I lived in the right neighborhood. I worked for the right brand. I had the right image. So I think all of that kind of did help the way that I was perceived by people, at least as they got to know me, right? Or at least as they knew the way that I was navigating the world. And I say that because I had a fabulous experience living in Italy, but I know that's not the case for everyone. There can be a lot of microaggressions. There can be a lot of overt racism. There can be a lot of like fetishizing as well if you are trying to, if you're single and trying to build relationships. That's something that you will need to be aware of. And on the other hand, in Asia, like it's just a very different environment, especially being in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's actually very Western, but a lot of parts of East Asia are very different. And one of the main differences is that they really have a value of conformity, that they really value collectivism much more over individualism. That's a very Western value. And so because they have a value and emphasis on collectivism, you as a Black person just kind of stand out more. So you might be subject to more scrutiny, not always from a perspective of we don't like Black people, but just because you are kind of like breaking the harmony and you stand out, and like, some places very, very much value their thousands of years of traditions, and you are different and they don't like different. And they wouldn't like anybody different. It's not just because you're Black, it's just because you're not, from where they are from. Like that's kind of a big thing in Japan. Like I feel like they don't like anyone who's not Japanese. And I love Japan. I've had a great time there, but you do just kind of feel like you stand out sometimes. And if that kind of, doesn't sound great to you, or you're feeling uncomfortable as you hear me talk about that, then you might think about moving somewhere that's a little bit more Western and has those different kind of values. And now let's talk about your wallet. So cost of living and finances. Because economics and the cost of living and also the opportunities you will have do vary greatly. So Western Europe has a pretty great economy. Everyone's economy is struggling a little bit right now, but it is what it is. But there are a lot of opportunities in tech, in finance, in different creative industries, in fashion, hospitality, things like that. Cost of living does vary, so places like London, Paris, and Zurich are very expensive. All of Scandinavia is quite expensive, but then Southern and Eastern Europe might be a little bit cheaper. And generally speaking, the salaries will be a lot lower than what you're used to seeing in the US because the cost of living might also be a little bit lower. So it kind of just balances out, but it will be a little bit shocking when you first see that, like the kind of salaries you might be getting offered. And while in East Asia, especially in certain parts of East Asia, the economy is growing much quickly. It's expanding, not contracting. So there'll be a lot of different opportunities because there is some degree of an economic boom. English teaching opportunities are also pretty big here. There's a lot, everything from like teaching little kids to teaching business English for international executives. So if you are interested in teaching English or you just want to move abroad and you don't know what else to do, you might have a better opportunity in Asia, especially in East Asia, just because there is that market. The cost of living also varies a lot. So Southeast Asia, places like Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia are pretty cheap. Places like Hong Kong and Tokyo can be expensive AF. So things to keep in mind. So just kind of research job market, what you plan to do and what you might make in each city versus how much it would cost you to live there. And now let's talk about one of the most important things, which is community and making friends. Because no matter where you move, even if you have the great job, the great apartment, no one's racist, you're perfectly fine. If you don't have a circle of girlfriends, you are not going to be happy. Like you will be absolutely miserable. So we're going to talk about how you're going to set yourself up for success in that regard. Most major cities will have pretty strongly established expat communities. They may not be all Black, they might just be kind of all very diverse and very international. But if you're looking for that kind of connection with other foreigners, you want to probably focus on bigger cities. So places like Seoul, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Asia will all have those kind of really big expat groups. I was a member of an expat group when I lived in Italy, which was amazing. It was called Internations, but it was very European. There were not a lot of like I guess just like other people, like most of them were other Europeans who were living and working in Italy. So it wasn't necessarily the vibe. And it was great, but I just did notice that it wasn't as international as the ones I've seen here. But there's a ton of resources. One of my favorite places to find them is looking on Facebook. So just kind of search Black Expats in whatever city, you're going to find something. And remember, it's up to you to stay proactive about how you build your relationships, how you manage your own community. I know some people might be very introverted and it's very difficult for them to do that, but you're going to have to learn how to put yourself out there. And last, let's talk about safety because if you're a woman, especially someone who's going to be moving abroad alone, you of course are going to have concerns about your safety. Now, first of all, no matter where you go, it's always necessary to take some precautions. So pay attention to your surroundings, practice awareness, practice some general street smarts, maybe take a self-defense class. And remember that you might have some experience with racial bias or microaggressions, and while that might be detrimental to your mental health, it is usually not physically threatening. So I do feel incredibly safe living in Hong Kong. Even as a major urban city, it has incredibly low crime rates. I also felt pretty good living in Italy, but I did just kind of exercise those usual precautions we talked about. Just again, being aware of your surroundings. If you're trying to figure out the kind of best place for you to go and are really concerned about crime, especially if you're by yourself, just kind of look at some of the publicly available data, look at global crime rates, look at the embassy or consulate or the State Department website will kind of have a page with the travel advisory information, and it will be very detailed about where you should go, where you should not go, neighborhoods to avoid, what the main concerns are. I think that's a really great resource to kind of help you figure out what the kind of average threats might be so you can learn how to navigate them. And let's also talk about lifestyle in both Europe and Asia. And both are going to be really great options, to be honest. Like both will have amazing travel opportunities. Both will have a great infrastructure for travel. So high speed rail, low cost airlines, just easy, a lot of accessibility, not a lot of hard like visa or vaccine requirements within the different countries in the regions. Both will have great history, great culture, great food, all those kind of things. I would say if you are from the US, living in certain parts of Europe might be a little bit easier if you want family to be able to come visit you or you want to be able to go home a lot. Just because it's a shorter flight, it's a little bit more accessible and like a little bit cheaper to kind of get back and forth. Going to Hong Kong takes like a day to get back each way. So it's a little bit of a burden kind of like going home or having people come visit. When I was in Europe, they could do so in like 7 hours versus like 14 to 15. But those are just a few things that you should consider if you're a Black woman who wants to move abroad and are trying to decide which place is the best to go. There's no one size fits all approach. It's really going to be all about what works for you. And also remember, even in those two very large, very different geographic regions, countries are also very different. Cities are also very different. You might love Portugal but hate Spain. You might love Italy but hate France. You might, want to live in Taiwan but not really feel so good about Korea. Those are all going to be different things that you will learn as you go and as you get into your research and think about your job opportunities, your background, your career, your kind of professional networking and all that stuff. So I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel and please share it with someone who might also find it helpful. I am really trying to get this channel to 6,000 followers, so any love you can show me to help me with the algorithm gods would be so appreciated. And don't forget to check me out on Instagram and TikTok for more short videos, especially daily mini vlogs and day in the life kind of stuff if you're into that. And let me know in the comments what your biggest priority is when you're considering a move abroad and what your dream destination would be. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.